Welcome in for another episode of the Silver and Blue Podcast. I believe we are on episode 39. Welcome in, Corey. Corey, we are flying a little bit high, a little bit higher than we were last week following the debacle at Lambeau Field. Cowboys go into the 8-1 Vikings house and give them. I've been racking my brain, Corey. I've been racking my brain for the last day since the last 24 hours or so since the game ended. I've been racking my brain for a bigger ass beating in a Cowboys game against like a good, like they've blown out bad teams, but I've been racking my brain trying to think of a time they just beat the living hell out of a good team like that, especially on the road, and especially I guess it was unprecedented because that was the largest road victory in franchise history. I believe the old record was 35, and the Cowboys won by 37. Corey, how are we feeling on this Monday evening?
Yeah, I mean that was definitely as down as I was on this team coming into last week's show after the Packers debacle. Um, Complete opposite this week, of course. This is how I wanted to see this team respond if you are going to be considered a true contender in the NFC. Now, I'm still not ready to get jump back in. To this team is going ready for this playoff run, but because I need to see more consistency. I need to see them go beat the Giants and finish this thing out.
Mhm.
13-4, 12-5, something along those lines, and kind of play the style of football that they played yesterday. And one thing that really stuck out to me immediately in this game was the fact that Michael Parsons set the tone immediately.
Yep.
I
Oh my
looked at
God,
some of
yeah.
his quotes coming into the game where he was just like, it's on me to make sure that we don't have that type of defensive performance, again. And he comes out immediately, gets a strip sack fumble, and sets the offense up in great field position. And of course,
Mhm.
the offense was able to take advantage of it. You look on offense, Tony Pollard, has another big game, even with Zeke back. Zeke still
Yeah.
gets in the end zone twice. CeeDee Lamb makes plays. Gallup looked, in line with kind of what we expect from Gallup,
Yeah.
as he gets further away from that ACL injury. And then I got to go back to the defense real quick because every year we come into this matchup. I said this last week. Every year we come into this Minnesota matchup and say, "Oh my gosh, they have Dalvin Cook, they have Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, they added T.J. Hawkinson," and it just never materializes that way. So it just appears that Dallas is a great matchup for Minnesota. And then you look at the job that Trevon Diggs did traveling with Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson only had 2 catches for, I believe, 19 yards while Diggs was in coverage. He finished the game with only 3 catches for 33 yards, and this is
Yep.
after last year only having 2 catches for 21. So I mean, all around, this was as close to a perfect performance that you can get, that we've seen from the Cowboys in a very long time against a good team on the road in a hostile environment. The Vikings were riding high coming into this game. And I know Zadarius Smith had some quotes that haven't aged well, before the game, asking how he's feeling. He said he has that 9-1 feeling, and that
Yeah.
didn't materialize, obviously, with a 40-3 beatdown. So, yeah, overall, just a great performance from this team. And now we get a short week for the Giants, who are coming off a miserable loss at home to Detroit. So, yeah, I mean, everything's good right now.
Yeah. It's funny. The NFL is such a week to week league where, 7 days ago the sky was falling and the defense was bad again and they can't win big games. And then here we are a week later. Things changed. But yeah, I thought, I guess, let's start just, I'll start with a general look at things. Really unfortunate that the Colts blew that big lead against the Eagles because you'd be sitting here, I believe, one game behind Philly, with the Christmas Eve matchup ahead. But yeah, either way, it's all about just doing your job, winning, keeping pace, and things will work out because Philly seems to be faltering a little bit and kind of showing some of the reasons that you may have doubted them. But yeah, this was a great showing by Dallas, and big picture. If you're able to catch Philadelphia, this was also a huge game in terms of seeding. Where let's say you do catch Philadelphia, the only other NFC team that's going to be in that upper echelon of the standings in terms of best records in the conference is Minnesota. They're kind of the only other team that would be in the mix with you and Phil, whoever wins the NFC East, let's say. And so Philadelphia and Dallas both have wins over Minnesota. That could matter come the end of the season whenever it's time to figure out seeding. So, and this was just really important to win this game coming up with the upcoming schedule. Because you look at after the Vikings game, the 4 games Dallas has leading, and again, we'll get back into the Vikings game, but just brief, big picture thing here. Uh, their next 4 games, I would venture to say Dallas is going to be favored by at least a touchdown and maybe double digits in their next 4 games. They have the Giants at home, Colts at home, Texans at home. They're already favored by 9 against the Giants, and I think they'll be favored by more than 9 against the Colts and Texans at home. And then they go to Jacksonville, who is not very good. And, I don't think you'll be favored by double digits on the road, but you'll be a heavy favorite in that game as well. There's a very decent chance that, if you go 4-0, even 3-1, you're looking at, 4-0, you're looking at an 11-3 team coming into that Philadelphia game. And hopefully Philly's dropped a game between now and then. So, Dallas has to keep taking care of business, but the schedule's setting up nicely for them. And I said from the jump, this Packers Minnesota road trip is going to be tough. And I think I might have said this on the pod, but I think I would have taken a 1-1, and boy, did they get one. But yeah, let's start with the defense. You mentioned it
Just
earlier.
real quick,
Yeah,
because you
go ahead.
mentioned, yeah, because you mentioned you hope the Philadelphia Eagles have a loss coming in the next couple of weeks. And honestly, I can see them slipping in one of these next 4 games. Before you get to Dallas, they have a game against Green Bay, which I know Green Bay is down, but I still think Green Bay is capable if Aaron Rodgers gets
Yeah,
hot to go in there and win that game. Then you have a home matchup against Tennessee. Tennessee's playing really good football right now. We saw them on Thursday night handle the Packers. Then they go to the Giants and at the Bears. And I mean, the Giants, the style of football that they're playing, I mean, division opponent, I wouldn't expect the Eagles to just automatically sweep the Giants. So they have 2 matchups with them for their regular season, but their road matchup is coming in a couple of weeks.
yeah,
And it's in a stretch of, or starts a stretch of 3 games, three straight games for the Philadelphia Eagles to be on the road. So I do think
yeah.
1 or 2 losses is coming ahead of the Dallas matchup. So what Dallas has to do is to make sure that game matters is take care of their business. And with the schedule that you laid out, I would be disappointed if we didn't head into that matchup with the same 3 losses that we have right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the NFL. Stuff can happen, but I think worst case, you're hoping to come into that game at least 10-4. And then if you take care of business, you'll be 11-3. So, we got plenty of time to talk about those games. Let's talk about this Vikings game. Like you mentioned earlier, just from the jump, Micah Parsons set the tone, strip sack Kirk Cousins. Offense was only able to get 3. The Vikings responded with 3 of their own, and that was the last time the Vikings put any points on the board, as Dallas then scored 37 unanswered points. And again, I know we're sticking with the defense, but the offense was sharp. They put it away early, but the defense, man, I mean, what a response. Everyone questioned them. Everyone's like, oh, you can really run the ball on them. Dalvin Cook averaged 6 yards a carry, but his success rate was like 27%. I think most of those yards came on a couple runs. Outside of that, Dallas largely was much better against the run. They were much more disciplined against the run. And I was a little concerned about that, with Anthony Barr being a surprise scratch since he retweaked his hamstring on Saturday, and it sounds like he's probably going to miss the Giants game too. And I know Micah Parsons and Trevon Diggs get all the praise, and rightfully so. And Dorrance Armstrong and DeMarcus Lawrence were great as well. But it's really just been a revelation to see Damone Clark out there for Dallas at linebacker. He's added so much speed to the defense. Even Jabril Cox got a few snaps, but Damone Clark got a pretty full workload at linebacker, and I just did not think he was going to be able to play this year. He's added a whole new dimension. He's allowed Micah to stick to linebacker, stick to edge, even with Anthony Barr out. I mean, he adds a whole new dimension to this defense, and I'm really excited to see where this develops, because I mean, he just adds a whole new element of speed.
Yeah, and it allowed Michael Parsons to kind of go back to playing that primarily at edge, which Cowboys fans everywhere love that to see him getting after the quarterback. And just speaking of the run game, I think some of that also had to do with Minnesota's game plan. I know they fell behind relatively early, but they didn't really commit to the run as to where last week against Green Bay came out and they said, Aaron Rodgers, you're only going to throw the ball 20 times. And we're going to see what this Cowboys defense is going to be made of. Now, obviously, when you jump out to a huge lead like the Cowboys did, it allows you to take advantage of a one-dimensional team. But at the same time, I think Minnesota's game plan was kind of backwards coming into
Yeah.
the game, and they kind of went and kind of stuck to their guns. Kevin O'Connell, three wide receiver sets. We're going to throw the ball over the yard, and that really sets up to the Dallas's defense
Yeah.
strength. And I think that definitely cost them in yesterday's game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, it was just all about the Dallas secondary was much better today, or yesterday, but it was just all about that pass rush. Dallas, I'm looking at the PFF box score now. Dallas totaled 26 pressures. 14 of those were hurries, 5 of them were hits, and 7 of them were sacks. I mean, they had Kirk Cousins in hell, quite frankly. Micah Parsons finished with 9 pressures, 2 of which were sacks, 5 hurries, 2 hits. Looking up and down here, DeMarcus Lawrence had 1 pressure and a sack. Dante Fowler had 4. Dorrance Armstrong had 3 and 2 sacks. Sam Williams, the more he plays, the better he gets. He's proven to be a weapon. He had 2 pressures. Oso Digizua had 3 pressures from the inside. So those are all the guys that had multiple pressures. There was a few guys with 1. But yeah, man, it was just dominant up front from Dallas. I thought they did a much better job against the run, and it allowed them to, and also just with this team, when you get a lead with this pass rush, it's over. Like if you go down by multiple possessions,
Absolutely.
if you go, obviously Green Bay game aside, unfortunately, but generally with this defense, if you go down, 10, 14, 20 points, it's over. Like just because at that point we saw it, the Dallas pass rush just teed off on Kirk Cousins. And especially, it really got going when Christian Darrisaw went out with his injury at
Yep.
tackle. I mean, they just started teeing off on Kirk Cousins. There was one drive where I want to say it was in the third quarter where I think it was sack, hit, or it was maybe a sack. The Trevon Diggs one-handed PBU that he almost picked off, and then another sack. Like they were just that was dominant.
Yeah,
It
it
was
was.
dominant by the Dallas defense against a pretty good Minnesota offense.
Yeah, and then when you look at, in terms of, sacks production, I saw this from NFL on CBS today. Micah Parsons actually retweeted this, that the Cowboys have the most sacks through 10 games in the last 20 years at 42 sacks through these first 10 games. In 2017, the Jacksonville Jaguars had 40. But I mean, that just goes to speak to this pass rush, and it's just coming in waves. It's coming from everybody.
Hmm.
And like you said, when a team gets down, it's good night. But I
Yeah.
think what one thing that kind of hurt them last week is I think they were sensing that Green Bay was going to get into that panic mode and start throwing the ball over the field, and they were kind of getting upfield, losing contain on their gaps. But Green Bay just kept running the football, and but at this point, when you're down 21, 27 points, you coming right out of halftime, you score another touchdown, and then that turns from, I believe it was what, 23-3 at halftime, then it's 30-3, and then at that time, I mean,
Yeah.
you can't commit to the run at that point. So I definitely, shout out to the defense for responding. I know Mike McCarthy talked a lot about having like a leadership council meeting on Wednesday where a lot of people were able to get things off their chest and kind of really, lock in and like uh, Jaron Kerr says, dominate the process. I think that really all showed on the field. And then Dak Prescott in his post game was saying that, I could tell that this defense was going to come out flying around. They were going to have this type of dominant performance. And, I believe that because, it's
Yeah.
easy to kind of say that after the fact, but I truly believe that just from all the quotes that you were seeing last week and some of these, real conversations that this team was having. And, to respond like that is, quite impressive.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's no other way to put it other than impressive. And just generally, like and we talked about this last week. It's been really frustrating, especially when you look at last year and these big statement opportunities where you're playing another contender in the conference or in the league. Yeah, it's kind of a big game, a lot of eyes on it. And it's like, all right, let's see if this Cowboys team is for real. They've come short in those moments time and again. And this was another one of those moments. And this was a game I think the 2021 team loses just because they never responded in those games against other contenders in the
Teams. Yep.
conference. They just came up short, and that they absolutely did not do that yesterday. They were dominant up front. Looking more at the some things they may have done differently. Chauncey Golston, who is inactive against Green Bay, they like him because they can flex him inside and outside from D tackle to D end. He was their fourth highest graded defender yesterday. He was active. Looking at the other grades, Donovan Wilson got a really nice grade. Trevon Diggs was Dallas's third highest graded defender. I know you mentioned him. Micah Parsons was obviously their highest graded player, which has happened more than once this year. But another name I wanted to shout out was Jaron Curse. I thought this was his best game of the
Absolutely.
year. You mentioned his quote about the process and dominating the process, and he certainly did that this week. He was one of their highest graded defenders. I believe he's their fifth highest graded defender on the week. If you take out Jabril Cox, who only played, Jabril Cox was the second highest, but he only played 7 snaps. Um, but Curse, he's kind of the tight end eraser. And looking at, let me pull up these coverage matchups here, because Curse was really good in coverage. He graded tremendously across the board, and he's kind of used as the tight end eraser. He was in coverage. He was targeted twice in coverage against T.J. Hawkinson, one of the best tight ends in football. Only gave up one catch for 4 yards. I thought Jaron Curse this was his best game of the year by far, and he seems to be getting further and further away from that knee injury that sidelined him for a few weeks early on. And he definitely got his licks in imitating the skull chant after he made a tackle for loss early or later in the game. So he definitely deserves. A lot of players on this defense deserve some love, and we've shouted most of them out, I think, unless we've forgotten somebody. But Jaron Curse is definitely somebody that deserves some love for how yesterday played out.
Yeah, and I also have to salute Curse for also because he was one of the most vocal players,
Yep.
throughout last week. Come out and saying, we're going to address this, we're going to get this right, and for him to come out and back up his words, just like Michael Parsons did, very important to see. And it's a credit to not only the coaching staff, I think, but also to the vets on this team of rallying the troops and getting guys, that right mind frame and to go out there and dominate and have a performance like that. And TJ Hawkinson, you mentioned him. He finished the game with 5 catches for 34 yards, but I believe he only had one catch when the game was like even close to being in balance. He picked up a couple, garbage catches late.
Yeah.
But yeah, J.Ron Curse, just great performance from him and, great bounce back. And like I said, I think this was a big step to do this against that type of team. Because I think, when last year, Denver came in and, they figured out the blueprint and then they responded, against, Atlanta with like a 40 piece and beating them pretty bad, but it was at the Atlanta
Yeah.
Falcons. So doing this on the road against Minnesota definitely feels different. But now it's just about consistently going out there and, doing it week to week and, not having some of those lapses that they had last week.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more name that I do think deserves some love is Anthony Brown. He was also one of the highest graded defenders, and I believe he was targeted. It says here on PFF's box score, he was targeted 5 times, only allowed one catch. That I believe. Let me see here. He allowed one catch for 15 yards, and that's on 5 targets. Anthony Brown was really good yesterday. It was really good to have him back because, quite frankly, Kelvin Joseph struggled again, and it just doesn't appear to be there for him. And that just makes the importance of Anthony Brown that much greater. Anthony Brown has kind of been this fan base's whipping boy for a while. I'm not really sure why, but he's been around for a while and he's turned into a pretty decent number 2 corner. Dallas really needs him going forward. I think we saw some of that last week in Green Bay when he went down. Things started
Hmm.
getting a little sideways in the secondary. I thought it was great to have him back. They rotated a little bit early on, but he ultimately ended up playing a lot. One other thing I noticed that I'm going to be looking for on Thanksgiving is we heard about this Demarcus Lawrence injury and the stuff he's playing through. He only played 23 snaps, and maybe some of that had to do with the blowout. They're like, all right, we don't need to make you push it, but he's playing through some pretty serious stuff that I imagine we're going to find out after the season. It was pretty rough stuff he was playing through. Um, he was very limited in his snap count, but he was still effective. So I'm looking forward to see how they go about handling him this week. I honestly,
Short week.
with the mini bye coming up, I wouldn't hate resting him against the Giants. I just hate that he's going to have to play on a short week. But that it's the NFL. That's how the schedule shakes out. So yeah, he's definitely worth a mention as well because he was only played 23 snaps, but he was still pretty effective and one of their better defenders.
Yeah, I mean, he picked up another sack where he just blew straight through the line.
Yep.
And it is going to be interesting. I believe the practice report came out today, and I know some notable names were on that injury report. And I believe he was one of them and did not practice, but I don't think they even had like a official practice today. It was more kind of like a simulated type of thing where they might have did a walkthrough and kind of went in there and kind of watched film and different things like that. But he was listed as a DNP today. But again, not really concerning. He didn't practice much last week either, and the only difference this week is just, it's short week. You have 4 days. But then if you can get through this game on Thursday and get that 10 days off, I think that will
Yeah.
do a world of wonders for DeMarcus.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're 20 minutes into the pod and we haven't even talked about the offense. And as great as the defense was, I would contend that I was much more encouraged by what we saw from the offense because I mean that was their best showing of the season. I know they put up maybe gaudier numbers against the Bears, but I think this was the best performance because you know this was Dak's best game of the year. I mean, Dak was just fantastic early on. This was the formula. They were able to run the ball, and it wasn't so much that the run set up the pass. It was just that they were able to effectively run the ball, set up manageable third downs, and for all those third down woes that we heard about. Ed Werder tweeted out that stat about Dak. He's been one of the worst quarterbacks in third down on third down this year. Let me pull up the box score to see how they were on third down specifically, but they were just
12 of
surgical.
17,
What was it?
12 of 17, and 8 of 10 in the first half.
That is efficient as hell, and that's going to win you a lot of ball games if you convert 80% damn near of your third down. So they were terrific on third down. They stayed on schedule. There was very few penalties. And Dak was surgical, just making the right reads. And I do think Dallas's game plan was a little bit scared of Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. A lot of quick game, but they were still able to hit some shots downfield. I mean, that throw to Tony, the second touchdown to Pollard was just beautiful. The first one was Dak. I mean, I know the first one was a swing route to Pollard on a check down, but if you watch that play, you see Dak go through all of his reads. Like Dak was just sharp on his progressions, on his pre-snap. The Pollard second touchdown was on a pre-snap adjustment from Dak. And then the
15
first one,
and
you see
third and
Dak go
11.
through all of his reads and he checks it down to Pollard, and Pollard takes it, at 25 yards. So it was. I was thrilled with how well Dak played yesterday, and it was really encouraging to see him play like that.
Yeah, I mean, when you finish the game 22 of 25, 276 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, which has been huge. When Dak has had some of his struggles, he's been turning the ball over a little bit. He didn't get sacked at all in yesterday's game. He only had really the one scare where he kind of turned right into
Yeah.
his area and somehow got out of it. But just an overall clean game. And I think Kellen Moore kind of found that balance between Pollard and Zeke. Both of them had 15 carries each. And, obviously, Pollard added in the 6 catches, over 100 yards receiving, and the 2 touchdowns that you previously mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It was just an all around, just balanced performance. CeeDee Lamb, quiet day, but 5 catches, 45 yards. Gallup, 3 for 41, where, Gallup wasn't even involved a couple of weeks ago in the game. So just kind of putting things together and kind of finding a flow, finding a rhythm. Dak's getting further away from missing, those 5 games. So, this is an offense that you can win with. Now it's like I said at the beginning and throughout this show, is just about consistency now. Can you go out and, you're not going to beat a team 40-3 every week, that's understood. But, play that type of football, be sharp with your reads, make the right decisions, receivers, quarterback, be on the same page. The workload between Zeke and Pollard, figure that out, keep that consistent, and who knows what this offense can do. But yesterday was definitely could end up being a turning point in the season. When you look back at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were just really, really sharp. I mean, obviously you mentioned CeeDee Lamb. That catch he made at the end of the first half was
Oh,
just
ridiculous!
ridiculous stuff from Dak Dak and CD. And I believe saw Next Gen Stats that had like uh, a predictive completion percentage of like 7%. It was one of the lowest of the year. I think it might have been the most difficult or unlikely catch of the year. Just terrific stuff from Dak. And honestly, you mentioned Gallup. His stat line wasn't anything insane, but I mean, I thought this was the best Gallup has looked all year as well. So
Absolutely.
just great stuff. And I did want to point out, for all that's been made out of Dak, and is he that guy? And has he been right since he's come back from his injury? I'm looking at the advanced statistics quarterbacks rankings right now. In the 5 weeks since Dak has come back, week 7 to 11, Dak is second in the league in EPA and CPOE composite. That is right between Tua and Patrick Mahomes, who are both playing obviously great football. Dak ranks third in EPA per play. He ranks second in success rate and completion percentage over expected. He ranks fourth. I mean, he's been playing at a tremendously high level since he's come back. I believe Dallas is averaging 35 points a game since Dak has come back from his injury. As silly as the Cooper Rush Dak conversation was, it just continues to look sillier each week. But yeah, just outstanding from the offense. And so, that's with Dak and the passing attack. We need to talk about Zeke and Pollard. I was thrilled with how they use Zeke and Pollard to complement each other, both on the ground and through the air. Just terrific stuff from Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy on how they utilize Zeke and Pollard.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you want. I mean, I think you need both, and I think you kind of saw that when they got down into the red zone. They gave Pollard two opportunities to get in the end zone. He did not get there. They brought in Zeke on third down, and he went right into the end zone. That is the type of stuff that you can live with, and that's kind of the imbalance or the balance that you need because Pollard is obviously the more explosive back. Between the 20s, he gives you a chance to hit a home run every single time he
Yep.
touches the ball. Whereas Zeke is your bruiser. He's your guy that when short yardage, third and twos, fourth and goal, from the one type of situations, that's where Zeke is so valuable. And it's a reason why I think he still needs the role that he has on this team. And I think it's been on the coaching staff to, make sure you kind of figure out that balance and kind of seeing what you have. But I also think, the 2 weeks that Zeke missed, I think the coaching staff kind of was like, okay, we can't really take this dude off the field. I think they finally got to them to where we can see this type of role going forward with Pollard out there. So Kellen Moore, I mean, finally figured it out. I mean, it took 4 years for you to finally do it, but it feels like it's on the right track. So now again, consistency is feel like the theme of this show, but now we need to see it consistently from you too, Coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just, I mean, Pollard, I don't know what more you can say about him. I'm not a pay running backs guy, but if you can get Pollard at a reasonable deal to stay in the offseason, that's a conversation for way after the season for us to have. But man, he adds a whole nother element to the offense. I mean, the juice he brings, and we heard about it all training camp. Oh yeah, we're going to use Pollard as a receiver more, and it took 12 weeks, but we finally saw it. So he's just so explosive. I mean that the second touchdown was impressive because he won a route downfield and just took off from everybody. But the first one, Dalton Schultz threw a great block for him, clearing the way for him. But I mean, oh my God, the explosiveness he showed to bust through and get
Mm-hmm.
to the goal line. I mean, that was tremendous stuff from Tony Pollard. He deserves every bit of love that he's getting today and every bit of love that he's gotten, all along, and especially since Zeke's injury. Since Zeke's injury, I believe he went for 134 against the Bears on the ground. I think
117 against
115,
Green Bay.
117 against Green Bay, and then I think he had I forgot how many rush yards he had yesterday, but he had 106 yards and
80.
2 receiving touchdowns through the air. So he had 80 rushing yards. So he had what,
Mm-hmm.
180 yards from scrimmage yesterday. I mean, he's a
Yep.
weapon. He is an absolute weapon, and
Mm-hmm.
he deserves every bit of credit that he's getting. And
And
all
he's
of it
going to
starts
deserve
with
every bit of money he gets this offseason, too.
yeah, absolutely. And I hope he gets paid, whether it's with Dallas or not. I just hope he gets what he deserves because, man, he's been
Yep.
tremendous. I believe he's averaging 6 yards a carry. And I think Marcus Mosher put out a graphic. I want to say it was yards per carry. It was like highest yards per carry in NFL history with a minimum of 500 carries. And he's like fourth all time. Just ridiculous stuff from Tony Pollard. So good on
Yeah, on
him.
the
Good on
season,
the Cowboys for getting him the touches he needs.
he has 118 rushing attempts, 701 yards, average carry 5.9, 6 touchdowns, and then the 2 receiving touchdowns that he had yesterday on the season with 243 receiving yards. So I mean, this dude has almost 1,000 all-purpose yards. And we're still got what we have 7 more games. So I
Yeah.
mean, this guy's going. He could touch 1,500 yards, total yards for the season. So I mean, this guy's going to get paid this offseason. And I know Brad Sham said on the broadcast that I caught as I was en route to a birthday party, but he said that he's hearing that the Cowboys do want to keep him around. They don't want to see him going elsewhere. So it's just going to be interesting to see how they figure that all out this offseason. And then, they brought up the fact that, he's 27 years old, but, I think we've touched on this in previous shows as well, but it's not the normal, wear and tear of a normal 27-year-old running back. So I think you have to take that into account and just how explosive he is. Like I said, it's just going to be interesting to see what they do this offseason. And I even heard out, an idea thrown out that they franchise tag him, and the franchise tag would come in right around 10 or $11 million. But like you said, we can have that conversation later on whether that would be smart or not. But that is just some stuff that has been thrown around in the last couple of days.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's the most explosive guy they got, and so maybe they use the franchise tag on Dalton Schultz again. We'll see. That's a conversation for the off season. But one speaking of Dalton Schultz, I did want to point out he was decent yesterday, but I was going to point out earlier that Dak's 3 incompletions. One of them he had to throw it away because he was under pressure, and then one of them was a ball that should have been caught in the end zone by Dalton Schultz. It was a great throw. And then the
He
other one
tried
he
to one
skipped.
hand it.
Yeah, and then the other one he kind of skipped to Gallup on a really well covered play. So just again, great stuff from the offense. I believe they scored on their first, I want to say 7 drives, either a touchdown or a field goal.
Yep.
And you can't, we've talked 31 minutes. You can't go without talking about the offensive line. I mean, they were terrific. Dak was only pressured 6 times all day. And I believe not all of those were Dak. Some of those came in garbage time because it looked like some of the backup O linemen were charged with a pressure allowed. So, yeah, looking at the pressures, Dakota Shepley, the backup center, was charged with the pressure. Jason Peters was charged with the pressure. Only Zach Martin, Terrence Steele, and Tyler Biotish were the only starters to allow pressure, and they each only allowed 1 pressure. They were terrific protecting Dak all day. And one thing before we talk about the other stuff with the O line, very notable that they made a comment about, yeah, no, we're not working with Peters at guard as much anymore. We're working with him at tackle. You got 20 snaps of Jason Peters at left tackle, and they got some reps for Tyler Smith in at left guard, which that means Tyron Smith is coming. He's around the corner. I gotta say, that injury happened, I just kind of assumed he was done for the year. They were saying December, and I was like, he's probably done. We're able to get Tyron Smith back, man. This offensive line is shaping up into something really special because Tyler Smith, as good as he's been, I think he'll be a mauler at left guard. And if they're able to get him right for left guard when Tyron Smith gets back, and Tyron Smith is able to stay healthy enough, and by the way, Jason Peters looked pretty good at left tackle as well. This O line is shaping up to be all right. I think they're going to be all right, and really encouraging to see that they're not BSing with this Tyron Smith injury news, because you always kind of roll your eyes at some of the stuff they say, but the fact that you're seeing Tyler Smith get reps at left guard, you're like, oh, so Tyron really is coming back. Okay, so it sounds like he's couple 2 maybe 3 weeks out, but yeah, it's just great stuff that you're able to see that Tyron really is probably coming back.
Yeah, and I guess I'm trying to temper my expectations for Tyron because the few times we've seen him in live action, or I guess not in live action, but in the playoff game, and then it seemed like during training camp he was kind of getting beat and tossed around a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how he comes back after not basically playing the entire season and then coming off one of his worst games in his career, and the last time he played a real game. But it is definitely good news. Obviously, you'll take a future Hall of Famer coming back
Oh yeah.
at any point during the season. And then if he can come back and actually beat Tyron Smith, and you only need him for a month of the regular season, and then hopefully another month of the postseason. Maybe it helps him stay fresh, and he's gonna come
Yeah.
in with fresh legs and just re-energized and just hopefully get back to his dominant self. And like you said, that would be a huge, huge get for this Cowboys team, along with the addition possibly of Odell Beckham.
Yeah.
coming in here, who's supposed to meet with the Cowboys, early next week. So, things could I mean, things are looking good, and help could be on the way as well.
Yeah, and one other thing, he's been a little bit of a whipping boy for the Cowboys offensive line this year, but I'm looking at the grades right now. Where are we? There we go. Um, Dallas's highest graded offensive lineman yesterday was, well, actually, it was. Oh, these numbers are so confusing. Okay, yeah, okay, I thought I was reading that right. Dallas's highest graded offensive lineman yesterday, and this is overall, and by far their highest graded pass protector all day. None other than Connor McGovern, who finally had a good
Mhm.
game. He didn't surrender a single pressure, received an outstanding pass block grade of 86. He was really good yesterday. He absolutely deserves some love for how he played, because he struggled for the better part of this year, and maybe he is getting the sense that he might be about to get bumped out of that left guard spot when Tyron Smith gets back, and he wants to put some good tape out there. I don't know. But man, he was really solid yesterday. And then the other, I know Zach Martin, he was Zach Martin per usual, but the other name that deserves a lot of love is Terrence Steele. I mean, he was moving bodies yesterday in the run game. He's a decent pass protector, but man, Terrence Steele is a lot of fun to watch in the run game. I mean, he's the definition of a mauler that just moves bodies, and the way he finishes blocks, he decleats some guys. He's really fun to watch. I thought Terrence Steele was one of his better games yesterday as well.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys that you feel him when he makes contact. You feel him, and defensive lineman can't feel good. Having him coming at you, whether it be pass protecting or in the run game, especially like you just touched on. But yeah, overall great offensive line performance. Anytime you don't give up any stacks and rarely give up any pressures, it's going to be a long day. And you combine that with the third down conversion percentage that the Cowboys had on offense. A lot of that credit can go back to the offensive line keeping a clean pocket and making sure that you're running the ball on whether you weren't running on first or second down. Getting into those third and manageable situations, I think, goes a long way to speak to the offensive line. So overall, great day, and they're going to get another test with the Giants on Thursday to kind of put some more momentum together, and hopefully start locking up, playoff positioning, and then hopefully, catch the Eagles.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just an outstanding day for the Cowboys. Really, really, uh, really, really good day, just all around, and definitely helps you. Definitely, yesterday you were able to visualize what this team's ceiling really can be. Uh, you know, Compared to how you felt last week. So, great stuff from the Cowboys. Outstanding response to a really tough loss, and the Giants lost. So you are now back in second place in the division. And this Thursday, you have a chance to, I think, bury the Giants for good, who I think we're finally starting to see really were never that good. So I think Dallas is currently favored by 9 points. We got a couple days to see how that moves, but you have a chance to put them away for good this Thursday, and you would be a game up on them, and you would have the tiebreaker having won both games against them. Um, and Dak traditionally, especially at home, is just terrific against divisional opponents. So I'm expecting another good performance, and Dallas has 3 straight games against weaker AFC South opponents afterwards. So they have a chance to stack some wins here leading up to the Philadelphia game over these next 4 weeks. And hopefully Philly's able to drop 1 or even 2 games in that stretch, and we'll see how things play out. But yeah, outstanding day. You and I will be back. I believe we discussed tomorrow to break down the because we got a weird week this week. Normally we do our game previews on Thursdays. Obviously can't do it this Thursday, given that the game is Thursday. So we're gonna do a game preview tomorrow. We'll record Tuesday. It'll be live Tuesday, and then it'll probably post Wednesday morning. So we'll be back to do that for sure. You got anything else before we get out of here, Corey?
No, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, great stuff. It's just it was a really really encouraging day for Dallas, and and again, hopefully they're able to catch the Eagles, and that Christmas Eve game. That'll be one of if Dallas is able to be, either tied or one game behind the Eagles going into that game, uh, that might be the biggest Cowboys home game in regular season wise for the division, and I don't know how long. So I'm really looking forward to Christmas Eve, and hopefully that game really really matters. So again, thank you guys for listening. As always, make sure to check out all of our socials at Cowboys News 365, at Dallas_Fanatic, and our Instagram at DAL Cowboys Fanatic. Check out Corey on Twitter at the Mr. Douglas with 2 S's. You can catch me at Nate_Sant77. And be sure to check out everything we got going on at the Dallas Sports Fanatic. All our coverage of all the other Dallas teams. And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Every little bit helps. So again, thank you guys for listening. We'll talk to you next time when we preview the Thanksgiving matchup with the New York Giants.